Okay, hello everyone, and thank you very much for coming along tonight for this exciting meeting about what's next for the left in Ireland. As was advertised, Jeremy Corbyn will be giving an address, but not here. We're going to show a video very shortly. Unfortunately, he had last-minute meetings in his constituency that he had to go to. So we will start off with an address from Jeremy, and then we'll move to our speakers here on the panel. And really, unfortunately, we've also, Paul just got a text from Luke Flanagan, and his car is broken down in Killygowan, so it seems unlikely. I'm very sorry about this. But you just have to be satisfied with our four speakers here, and of course Jerry Carroll, who is still on his way, and we hope his car won't break down. But no, it won't. He's nearly here, and he'll be here shortly. So we're going to start off with an address from Jeremy Corbyn. So I can't see a thing up there, guys, but I hope somebody can see me saying this, and then you're going to put it on now.
Congratulations on the left all over Ireland, coming together to support each other, showing how it is possible for people with different left histories and strands to work together to bring about a more just, more equal society, to stand against the power of the establishment and to stand against the power of global big money, which has done so much to impoverish so many people in Ireland and indeed many other parts of Europe. But it's also about coming together on global issues, on support for Palestine, on the search for peace in Ukraine, in opposition to more military bases across Europe, and the expansion of nuclear weapons all over the world. So when we come together on all these causes, we defeat the far right, we defeat the flag-waving nationalists who have nothing to offer other than hatred of refugees who themselves are mostly victims of war. And so when people come together, they can achieve things together. And that's what's so remarkable about what you've achieved in Ireland. My admiration and my congratulations.
Thanks very much to Jeremy for those words, and I think certainly the coming together of the left around the Catherine Connolly campaign showed that when the left does come together, as we indeed in People Before Profit have been saying for a long time, we're better than the sum of our parts, and we showed that by having the most incredible victory. So our first speaker here tonight is Paul Murphy TD, who was also on the political liaison committee of the Catherine Connolly campaign. So he's going to speak first.
Lisa, it is a strange experience just to speak into light, isn't it? You literally cannot see a single person, it's just darkness.
Turn the lights on.
The first thing I actually want to say is just to say how great it is to be back on a stage with Richard, but also Melissa. They've both been immensely missed over the last whole number of months, and it'll be really great to have them back, and I'm looking forward to putting my feet up for a while. People probably saw that on Friday night, at least one person, if not more than one person, broke into an iPass centre in Drogheda, poured petrol on stairs and set it alight, presumably knowing that there was a family of 5 sleeping upstairs, including one very young baby, 3 other children and an adult. And Presumably, they did so because they wanted to burn these children to death, because they came from a different country. That's obviously horrific. And there's a straight line between the scapegoating of asylum seekers that the government have been engaged in actually in the immediate aftermath of the Catherine Connolly victory. There's a straight line from that scapegoating, from the conscious attempt to create a hostile environment for asylum seekers in this country, a straight line between that and acts of violence like we saw on Friday, like we saw with a murder, we saw the conviction happening or the sentencing happening in the last few days, like we've seen with the more than 20 arson attacks on asylum centres. And, you know, I don't start with that really awful point to pour cold water on what will be a night of celebration, but to remind us of just how dark things are out there, and Ireland's not unique in that. We're in a world that is sinking deeper and deeper into barbarism, marked by ecological catastrophe, by war, by genocide, and by the rise of the far right. And in that context, the victory of Catherine Connolly stands out even brighter. It should give all of us hope, confidence in a very, very dark world that things can, things will, we can make things very, very different. And I think we need to draw whatever possible lessons we can from the Catherine Connolly victory. When you win something so significant in such a dramatic way, it is on all of us to think about, to discuss, to debate, and come out with as many possible lessons as we can to apply to all of our future work. And there's three immediate reasons that I think Catherine won that are important to think about. The first, and the most obvious, almost seems like too obvious to say, right? But it isn't said in the media, is the most important reason that Catherine won is that a majority of people in this country agreed with the values embodied by her, agreed with the values of the left. A majority of people in this country, despite all of the attempts to have a sober, rational, mature debate to say we need to get rid of our neutrality, a majority of people in this country do not go along with that. They don't agree with scrapping triple lock to satisfy what Heather Humphreys calls our allies. A majority of people believe that housing should be a basic human right, not a commodity for profit for corporations. A majority of people agree with Catherine Connolly when she says that Ireland is not full, when she says that those responsible for the housing crisis are those who profit from it and the politicians who represent them, the same in terms of the health crisis, the same in terms of the cost of living crisis, not vulnerable people. The second lesson is that a left that unites can win. At the start of the campaign, there was a lot of opinion pieces talking about how the left would inevitably fracture, it wouldn't hold together, and yet it did, and we delivered a victory. And what the left uniting is about, from our perspective, it's not just putting the sum of the individual pieces of the parties together. It's about creating a dynamic that gives people hope, gives people confidence that we can win, that encourages loads of other people to come and get involved. You know, over 15,000 people volunteered for the Catherine Connolly campaign. The majority of those, the big majority of those, were not members of any political party. And the third lesson I would say for tonight is that movements matter. Catherine's victory reflects and is a part of the movements we've had over the past number of years in this country. Above all, the movement against the genocide in Gaza and the Irish government's complicity in that genocide. That movement provided much of the energy, much of the new campaigners who are newly politicised, and it also shifted public opinion on Western imperialism, on our so-called allies. The Irish language movement, of which Catherine's election is another part of, and also the anti-immigrant movement, in particular the reaction to the anti-immigrant movement and the sense of a majority in this country of repulsion from where those people want to take this country. And the campaign itself was a movement. Like, I spoke with Catherine so many times, and every time she was at pains to emphasise, this isn't about me, I'm just a symbol, this is about a movement. And you know, the media couldn't understand. They were kind of blown away by the fact that we packed out Vicar Street with young people. But like, we could have packed out a venue 5 times the size of Vicar Street. We genuinely could have, because this was a movement. And the fundamental lesson for us is that this movement can't stop there. It was never a movement just about electing Catherine to the presidency, but it's a movement about fundamental change in our society. And that's, for us, the lesson in terms of what comes next. And that isn't just about elections, it's about coming together in the here and now to fight for the values that Catherine represented and that people voted for. So, to fight to defend our neutrality, to fight to stop them dismantling the triple lock as they want to do in the next couple of months. To say that we need to have meetings across the country and build pressure to demand that the Occupied Territories Bill is implemented, including services, before Christmas. No more delays, no more watering down, no more obfuscation. To say we need to work together with Raise the Roof and the trade unions to have mobilisations on the housing crisis. And to be on the streets in big numbers to demand an end to the profiteering and action to stop the cost of living crisis. But then it also has to go beyond that and point to the question of government, because I think that's what has mobilised a lot of people around the Connolly campaign. Most immediately, that is going to be presented in terms of the Galway by-election, or Galway West by-election. And what we would like to see is a unified left candidate, to put it up to the political establishment, to put it up to the populist right, who will undoubtedly stand, and to win and to develop further momentum. If we can't have a unified candidate, well then, at the very least, a vote left, transfer left pact between the parties and the non-party candidates. But then we have to be pointing towards the general election, and how the general election can be framed as a real choice for people between Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, those who would prop them up on the one side, on the other side, those who are willing to offer a left government. And, this isn't something that will happen overnight. We don't have an ultimatum about people signing up to things at this meeting tonight or in a month's time or whatever. It is a process that we need to build towards that. But that has to be an important part of the goal. And so to that end, we want to discuss openly, honestly, with other political parties. We want to participate in the various grassroots initiatives that are pointing in that direction. We want to see there being established a kind of liaison committee of the left to discuss this. We want there to be a massive assembly of left parties, of people not involved in any party, to discuss these sort of questions to see if we can get there of offering a real choice for people. Because I think, like in all the rallies that I went to, the point that got the biggest response time after time after time was that question of, can we end the rule of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael? Can we have a left government that serves those who suffer from the housing crisis, that serves those who suffer from the cost of living crisis, serves those who suffer from the health crisis, instead of serving those who profit from it? And so we and People Before Profit are serious about that. That doesn't mean, I finish on this, that doesn't mean we're no longer going to build People Before Profit as a clearly eco-socialist party. We think we have unique things to bring to that conversation. If you agree with the things we're going to argue in that, you should join us. 3 things just to highlight. We say we rule out coalition with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and we call on the others to join us in doing so. We think that would make a big difference. Secondly, we think it is disastrous, morally, strategically, tactically, to engage in scapegoating of asylum seekers. Sinn Féin went down that road at the last local election, and the result was seen in terms of the result that they got. But thirdly, to say, just see how the establishment responded to Catherine Connolly potentially winning and then winning a position that is largely ceremonial. You look at the dirty tricks, you look at the smears, you look at the leaks from the guards, just imagine that's a fraction of what a movement for a left government would face. And therefore, if we want to have a left government that is not just a left government in name, well then you need to be willing to mobilise people power from below, and you have to fight for system change. You have to say fundamentally the problem the root cause of the housing crisis, the health crisis, and all the other crises that we face, the domination of profit in our society. We need to end that domination. We need to fight for an eco-socialist world. Thanks a lot.
Your microphone. Hand it over. So this will now be handed to. Then you need to have this as well. Apparently, well, it's slow in coming. I will introduce you. This is Emily Shogan, who's an independent councillor, and I don't know if you want it at this point. Who's an independent councillor in Galway West, and Galway City Council, was co-chair of the Galway campaign for the Galway Catherine Connolly campaign, and she's now going to speak to us if she can work out how to put on.
Just leave it on your lap.
Leave it on. Okay. Okay, so over to you.
How are you doing? I'm not used to being in front of this large of a crowd, so I'm not going to try Thanks for having me. It's a real honour to be asked to come and speak about the success, I suppose, in Galway and what we can learn from it. The campaign, when it started off in Galway, it started off in a very small room with some very big ideas, and my God, was it a hard job to fulfil it. Since the election, I must say, and I was saying this to Paul earlier, I was like, part of me wanted to revel in this movement that Catherine created, but what I saw almost immediately in the County Centre was, and afterwards, was that there was this urge to go back to politics as usual. And I don't really like that at all. I think so many people, what did you say, Paul, 11,000, over 11,000 people? 15,000 people came out to help make this movement happen. And I still feel like that these 15,000 people need to be thanked appropriately for it. So for the 300 odd people that are in the room, thank you so much for participating in the movement. I would love to see Catherine's movement continue. I would love to see cross-collaboration continue between the parties. And I know I definitely found that there was support from what people would call the right. There were people in the background in the right who were cheering us on as we went, and who were paying attention to what was happening on the ground. And I'd love for that kind of collaboration to continue as well. How we go about achieving that, I don't really know. What I would love to see, and again I said this to Paul, sorry Paul, when I'm nervous I tend to focus on people that I know in the room, so it's going to be Paul this evening. I did say it to Paul, I would love to see a United Left candidate come out of Galway West. There is such an appetite for it on the ground. How do we make that happen? How do we have that conversation start happening again? How do we continue it, and how do we grow from it? I would hope that there's lots of people in this room here who would like to see this growing. I'm open to suggestions. Please send them to me, because I think it is only together that we're going to be able to keep this movement going and keep this momentum going that we found on the ground. Out of the campaign in Galway, we've seen one new group come out of it who are really trying to find ways to progress things, and it's amazing because you're seeing some people who never would have gotten involved in politics before all of a sudden coming out going, how do we continue this? So I suppose that is the question here, how do we continue this? I don't have the answers. I wish I had the answers. It's only through this movement that we'll find these answers together and keep on growing this movement. And I did say I'd be quick on time, and that is me. I am quick on time. I don't know how much more I can contribute about what went on in Galway, other than it was absolutely magical, and it was absolutely magical to see it happen right across the country. It's magical that this conversation is going to be continued. And yeah, look, we're going to be here afterwards, I think, for a little while for more conversations. I'm more easier to talk to when I'm not under the spotlight. Yeah, that's me. Thank you very much.
We will be able to stay around after the formal parts of the meeting and have discussions with each and everyone. Now, Jerry Carroll, who is an MLA for People Before Profit in Belfast, just arrived in the nick of time to speak. So Jerry Carroll, I think you hosted Catherine Connolly before. She was endorsed by all the left parties. You hosted her up in Belfast. So I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Melissa. Sorry, I didn't know what this device was through me, so apologies. A magic disc, okay. Apologies for being late. We bombed down the road from Belfast. In the car. Just realised I made a sound of the song. And we had a busy day up in Stormont where we were trying to kick out the Education Minister, Paul Gibbon. I'm sure you saw who really disgustingly has a long list of, I'm sure Aoife Shells spoke yet, might say more after, a list of his sort of terrible positions. You know, he's stuck to put into trans people, he refuses to let women and girls wear trousers in schools, and really horrible kind of guy in horrible positions, to be perfectly honest. But for people who haven't seen, he was in Israel last week on a fact-finding mission, as he said. Obviously, disgusting stuff. He was meeting IDF officials and other people as well. And before he went, he thanked the IDF in Stormont for their bravery and for obviously for slaughtering hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. So we're trying to get him out of this position in Stormont because we don't think he's fit, frankly, to be an MLA or any public rep, but he, at the very least, shouldn't be a minister. So we're not successful yet, but hopeful that we can hopefully kick him out. And I think you're seeing obviously glimpses of maybe elements of the left coming together on that one issue, granted in Stormont, not longer term, but people, you know, Sinn Féin, the SDLP, who obviously didn't back Catherine Connolly, but coming together with the unified claim to push Paul Gibbon out of office. And for us, really, we hope that's successful. But the key thing, I think this is where the element and the connection of the Catherine Connolly campaign really fits. The key thing that will make that motion successful is what happens outside of Stormont. You know, there's protests happened on Saturday for hundreds of people, Mothers Against Genocide in Stormont today. Workers from College of First Year in West Belfast and other schools having lunchtime protests against the minister. And that's what the Catherine Connolly campaign sort of captured really, really well for me. Obviously, living in Belfast, unfortunately we can't vote. Hopefully this is the last time that Northerners can't vote in a presidential election. But it was really fantastic to have Catherine in West Belfast. We had her in the Cultanamak Animal Fake, so Irish Language Cultural Centre in West Belfast. She was shaking hands with everybody and people from all different backgrounds, different political persuasions and parties. There to kind of see her just when she announced the fact that she has talked about her election campaign. Obviously this was before Sinn Féin had kind of got in behind her. And I think our party, North and South, and People Before Profit, I am going to pat people on the back. I think we played a really, really fundamental and important part of this campaign. It wasn't just People Before Profit, but our comrades and Paul and others played a really important role. I think our role to talk about other people as well in Belfast, to kind of show Catherine Connolly around Cultland, bring her on the Shankill Women's Centre on the peace line to say, listen, we support her message of support for Palestine, of standing up for workers and standing up against femicide and for the environment. All these kind of things are not only obviously very, very important in the south, but really, really a breath of fresh air in the north to have a president who's standing up on these issues. And so, I don't know if I've time left, but I think where we go next, I think that the question was posed. That's obviously, I'm sure why everybody is here as well, and I think it's to try to take that momentum. Okay, it's not going to be the same type of campaigns, maybe the same intensity, obviously, as election campaign, but if we can channel those 15,000, 16,000 people to say, I think it would be a mistake just to say we're going to wait for the next Dáil election for Micheál. Well, he won't be around, obviously, hopefully go before Christmas, but Harris or whoever, just to kick them out. We obviously want them out of government, but how can we channel that energy to build a mass housing campaign north and south as well? How can we channel that energy to make sure people like Paul Gibbon are kicked out, but also Micheál Martin and the rest of them who are apologists for Israel and pathetically kind of both sides, as Jan said, are kicked out. So where that goes and how that's sort of worked out day to day and week to week and in Galway and across the island, I don't have all those answers, but if we can channel that to put pressure, and they really have a left government, I think would be a real addition to Catherine's presidency, and hopefully a shot in the arm for people who are, for them, the important takeaway lesson is that you can have a candidate, a president, you can defeat Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. We should hopefully have that in the next general election, but also build those movements for change now. So, yeah, okay. And go on a bit more longer. Anything in particular?
As Luke wasn't able to make it, he didn't come bombing up the road himself, so there was a bit more time. Have you the magic disc now? Yeah. So our next speaker is Aoife Moore, who's a well-known journalist and a contributor to many of the TV, particularly over the last while, to the political TV shows. So.
So I think I'm kind of coming at this from a different perspective, just because, unlike everyone else on this panel, I'm not a politician. And I've never, you might have heard different on Twitter, but I've never been a member of any political party. But I did work for Catherine Connolly. So I've been in the Dáil about 8 years and always said, with no offence to everyone on this panel, but I always said I didn't trust any politician enough to work for them apart from Catherine Connolly. So I came on early enough to do some press and media consultancy for Catherine in what was very much a volunteer-run campaign. I'm sure many years down the line I'll be able to talk about it in a funny way, but it was genuinely hair tearing out the stages at some point. But I think for me, when I look back at the campaign, and I've spoken to some journalists who are friends and other people, and for me, I think the thing that stands out the most for me about Catherine is that when pertinent and non-pertinent questions were put to Catherine by the media or by voters about things in her past, so something maybe that the press would have considered a scandal that was put to Catherine, Catherine thoughtfully answered that question and stood over her position. And what we have seen over the years constantly from Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin and Labour and the Social Democrats is that when they are caught up in something that they think might get them in trouble, they immediately apologise, they back down and they don't stand over their position. If you ask someone in Sinn Féin about the IRA, you'll get about 15 different answers because they haven't decided on what way the wind's blowing that day. And I think if the left is to be united, there are going to be serious issues in getting the centre-left parties to stand over their convictions if they think it might lose them votes. So we saw in the last general election, for instance, Sinn Féin must have had 20 different policies about Ukrainian accommodation and different refugee policies. And then it became very clear that the Dublin Central Sinn Féin was not the same as Offaly Sinn Féin and Donegal Sinn Féin. And that's a problem they're going to continue to have if they want to be as broad a church as having different policies for different people. And that would be my concern over so-called left unity, is that there cannot be left unity if people are going to scapegoat refugees. It's just... When we talk about accountability, the day before an arson attack on an IPAS centre, Simon Harris came out and started demonising immigration, and he has still not yet put out a statement talking about what happened in Drogheda, but he had the time to start a Snapchat account over the weekend. And I think people are starting to see through, this TikTok Taoiseach or whatever they're calling him. I think people want accountability. And the thing about Catherine was, when she did that Claire Byrne interview where she stood over hiring someone with a previous conviction, a lot of people changed their mind on Catherine because she would not bow to the pressure of I shouldn't have done that or I shouldn't have said that. And on mature reflection, what she said was, yes, I did it and I would do it again. And I think that is something to be really respected in a politician. I'm not saying they all have to be pig-headed and, dig their heels in, but I think taking accountability or admitting what they done, but also standing over it is a really big thing. And also not flip-flopping. And my concern would be, we've seen that with the Social Democrats over Owen Hayes, we've seen it with Sinn Féin, Labour, that's a different conversation. But I think, having the ability to stand over it. And the thing is, with those parties, and I'm saying this from a very political analysis way, with those parties, they want the votes more than anything. And you have to remember that the Social Democrats, for instance, can get a former Fine Gael voter and they can get a former Sinn Féin voter. They have a much broader church. And I think left unity would have to think about all these things before they decide to go in together. And also you all view each other with suspicion. So Sinn Féin think you don't want to be in government. But also there's this was suspicion on the left that Sinn Féin would go on with anybody if it meant they got into cabinet. So I would love to see a bit more left unity, but I am very sceptical. And sorry, this is a bit disjointed because Paul did not tell me I had to do a speech for 5 minutes before I thought this was like a Q&A type thing. So I have not. This is just off the dome. But my other point is on the media and what we saw. I had a very brief but I had a very brief insight into the press inbox for Catherine Connolly, and I have never in my life seen anything like it. Now you remember that I worked in the Dáil for a long time. I have a lot of respect for some of the journalists in there, but I have never seen anything like that. And I was quite taken aback at the actions of some people and how they conducted themselves. And if there is to be left unity, there needs to be preparation for how the press would react, because anytime anyone does anything outside the status quo, there will be a lot of questions. And that's a journalist's job as well, that they have questions, but there will be questions that we all find redundant or stupid or divisive, but they're going to be asked. So they will say, in this hypothetical left unity, come up and ask Paul Murphy what he thinks of IRA violence. This was the same thing of when it was asked of Catherine, will Sinn Féin back you now? How do you feel about Gerry Adams back in your campaign? These kinds of questions need answers, and that's another obstacle that the left will have to come over. And if Sinn Féin don't even have an answer for it, I don't know about the rest of going to get one. But I am very aware that although Catherine performed very well, extraordinarily well in the media, it was against a backdrop of utter hostility at times, not from all of them, but a lot of them. I think it was aided, the press were aided by Fine Gael. I know one journalist in particular who received over 30 messages in one day from a Fine Gael press officer about Catherine. And, that's how concerned they were. And imagine that plus Fianna Fáil. That's what a left unity candidate or left unity pact, vote chair, whatever, would be up against. And in that, parties will start panicking and they will start blaming each other. And I'm kind of glad he's not here, because a lot of my concerns about left parties are mostly what happened to Jeremy Corbyn at the moment. And what you don't want to do is, there is such a hunger that we've seen, I would say in London, but it could be mirrored here. There is such a hunger in London for a left-wing party, because the Labour Party there is not a left-wing party. And you have seen that there is such a hunger at the start, there was such momentum behind your party, and as soon as they had an obstacle, they started fighting with each other. Shit has hit the fan, and now Zach Polanski has come along and he's eating their lunch. But even the fact that Zach Polanski can get this much momentum this quickly shows there is a real appetite in the face of what of creeping fascism that we're seeing now all over the world. There is a real appetite for it. But I think, as a journalist and somebody who deals a lot in political analysis, there's going to be a lot of egos here, and the bigger parties are more likely to throw this whole left unity thing under the bus if they think they're going to win middle class people in Drumcondra. And that's, or any other place. And that would be my concern. So I think Catherine has shown what a grassroots campaign. There was a lot of, I wasn't here for repeal, but a lot of the people who worked for Catherine also worked on repeal. And I think there's a big lesson in that people power and community will save us all and could possibly get a left government elected, but there's going to have to be a lot of egos left at the door as well.
Now, I'm really delighted, and I'm sure I speak for everybody in the room here, when we say that we were thrilled to hear Richard's news last week that he has an all clear from cancer. Everyone in the room, and we're delighted to have Richard here on the stage with us this evening. We're delighted he's well enough to do this, and he is a voice that we've all missed over the last 9 months, and we're thrilled to have him back here tonight. So has he got the magic disc? Yes. He has the magic disc, and off you go.
Do I need to hold it in my hand, or?
I don't know what you do with it.
It's fine. It's fine. Thanks very much for that very warm reception, and yeah, it's good to be alive. And look, I've been out of things. I've been keeping an eye on it, obviously, but I've been out of things. One point that comes very directly from my own experience, which I'm certainly going to advocate for over the next while, but it is worth putting in the context of some of the bigger issues that both the election were about and that are central to what's going on in the world and the choices that we have, is there's certain machines that were used for my treatment, radiotherapy machines, and that's how they got rid of the cancer. And I'm very glad that they worked. Medical science has saved me, the fantastic health workers, the nurses, the doctors, the orderlies, the porters, all of these people. I can't list or name them all. That's why I got my life back. And about 50% of the population of this country will have an encounter with cancer. So this is important stuff for all of us, for our society. But after today, I met with the advocacy team for cancer services, including the radio oncologist who oversaw my case, and she highlighted the fact and asked me to speak up for them about the fact that the machines that deliver, they're called linear accelerators, that deliver the radio therapy, basically have a 10-year lifespan. But that most of the machines that we have, certainly in St. Luke's and many of the other places, are either 15 or 17 years old, and they are constantly breaking down. And when they break down, that means people with cancer diagnosis who have to have this treatment to save their lives can be, put under serious stress, impacting on, in all sorts of ways on the staff who have to deliver those services, sometimes leaving them to the outsourcing to the private sector so they can make money out of the situation. And you just think about that, and then you think about the fact that the Irish government want us to spend more on weapons. And that Donald Trump is urging the governments of Europe, and they're happily going along with it, saying we have to ramp up military expenditure to spend more on missiles and weapons and ways to kill people and destroy lives and end their lives, rather than putting them into the medical science and the technology that can help save lives, and in supporting the health workers who day in, day out fight to treat people and help them live. So to me, that's what left-wing politics is about. Whether you call it socialism, as I do, or you just call it the left, or you call it progressive, or it's just about fighting for a better society, that's the sort of priorities that we're interested in. And to my mind, and I wasn't involved in the campaign over the last while, although I was very glad I signed Catherine's papers, and indeed we had informal chats with Catherine and her team before. I did leave in April, and we made it very clear from the very outset that we thought it would be a good idea if she ran. She hadn't made the decision at that point, but we said we thought she should run, and that we would certainly be backing her if she did. And that was because it's in line with something we have been arguing for many, many years, is that we believe this country can be changed, and that if the left stick together or come together, it is possible to build a movement that can finally end 100 years of Fianna Fáil and bring in a left government, a government of change in this country. We believe that. Now, the victory in Catherine's campaign, first and foremost, is a tribute to Catherine, the fact that she is an honest, principled person who has a principled record of fighting to defend neutrality, fighting opposing the programme of the militarisation of Europe, fighting on issues like housing, fighting on issues like the victims and survivors of the mother and baby homes, fighting on behalf of the Irish language, standing up for the oppressed, the marginalised and the downtrodden. And people could see she was authentic, she was genuine, as they sometimes say to us. People say to us, I don't agree with everything you stand for, but I know you're honest, I know you're principled, I know you're fighting for something, better, for a better society. So first and foremost, it's a tribute to her. And to all of those, I'm sure many of them in this room, who got out, and the movement that was created fighting for her. It's a tremendous, tremendous achievement. And the fact that the other side got so dirty in it is, a testament to her, to the campaign, to all of the work you did, and indeed the way they expose themselves. The people who often present themselves as respectable and pragmatic, whereas the left are radical and extreme, but actually they kind of expose themselves as real extremists, didn't they? They're nasty people who want personal attacks, want to smear people, and then people like Ivan Yates behind it. Does it really matter to them? Is it Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, is it consultancy, or whatever? Right? The Yates thing really shows how little difference there is between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, isn't it? Excuse me, sorry, I have to drink water now. That's one of the consequences of this treatment, lots of water. But look, behind all that, and I don't have the answers to all of the questions, to my mind it's absolutely clear that as well as it being a tribute to Catherine, to the people involved in the campaign, that there's a whole generation of young people who are absolutely furious that in one of the richest countries in the world, they can't afford to live. They can't afford a roof over their head. They are being driven out of the country. Huge numbers of working class people are being left behind. They don't have the health services. They don't have the investment in health and education and the public services that they need. And, of course, the fury, the outrage over the genocide in Gaza and the movement that has been generated around that was absolutely central to my mind, because Catherine was seen by people as a principled part of the advocacy for Palestine for many years. And those movements, it seems to me, are absolutely critical to trying to answer some of the questions. I won't go into all the complexities that Aoife has raised or whatever, but it seems to me that one of the key tasks we have over the next period of time is to build movements based on the sort of model that we have seen around Catherine's campaign of different elements of the left coming together with the many, many people who are not part of any political organisation at the moment to build movements around the cost of living, around affordable housing, continuing the fight to demand that sanctions are imposed on the genocidal regime that is capable of the sort of horrors we've seen in Gaza. It's credible for all the lip service paid by this government to the horror that's been committed in Gaza, and still not a single sanction against the regime capable of this genocidal horror. So we have to build those movements and link that to a wider project of political change in this country. Because Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are never going to take the sort of action that is necessary against the genocidal regime. They are never going to stand up to the vulture funds, the speculators and the landlords who are profiteering and making money out of the housing misery faced by ordinary people. They are never going to challenge the profiteering of the energy companies who are responsible for the skyrocketing of heating and electricity bills and gas bills that is leading to the cost of living misery faced by ordinary people. So we have always argued to build this sort of left alliance. We're in People Before Profit because we don't agree with Sinn Féin, with the Soc Dems and Labour on many, many issues, and we want to be a leftward pressure on them. So this isn't about dropping our principles or refusing to challenge them when, we would not have a member in our party who's linked to a company like Palantir or directly implicated. Nor will we give any truck to the scapegoating of refugees and asylum seekers. We are going to be organising against this stuff which now the political establishment are actively leaning into. We have to be the people who explain, well, isn't it interesting now, the far right who have been presenting themselves as somehow anti-establishment are actually the best support for the political establishment who are leaning into their stuff. Because isn't it far better from Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael's point of view that there are people outside blaming innocent people in City West for the problems rather than out mobilising on the cost of living, on the housing, or on the failure of this government to sanction the genocidal regime in Israel? It's old school divide and rule, and we have to be out there challenging that and saying unite and fight for a better country. It is possible for a better world, for a better society. It is possible, but we need you involved if we're going to do it. Excuse me.
Richard, certainly it is good to have you back. Now's the time for people to contribute. All the people who've thrown their work into the Connolly campaign over the last 9 months, or indeed over the last decades, there'll be people out there. But I can't see a thing. So can I don't know if somebody can turn down the lights so I'll be able to see people. Well, it'd be more to turn down the lights. So not the lights there and down.
The stage lights.
Stage lights, is that what they are? So we have about half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour for contributions. If people have questions, feel free to put them forward, or just want to make some comments on what you see about the next steps for the left. So I see a couple of hands immediately. I have one here. If you just keep your hands up for a moment. So I have Adrienne here, and if Damien, you're running around with And it is still very hard for me if you could turn off the really bright lights in my face. Well, I have a microphone and a piece of paper. So thank you. That's much better. So Adrian.
Thanks. Just to say, Richard, you really came back with a bang there. It was phenomenal, and I really missed you. I also just want to give my credit to Aoife here as well. Like I think what you did was very brave in your career. Like you said the quiet part out loud, and I know that's definitely ruffled a few feathers. Like even locally, I'm from Carlow in PDP, and our journalist there recently started working in the Fianna Fáil office. So for everyone kind of in the scene, like we do recognise that relationship, but I think for the wider population, you know, it goes on. So just real credit to you. It was a tough thing to do. And just kind of something that I want to, I suppose, recognise, and I don't think we have to, I do think we have to give the upper class credit on this. Bear with me. Something that they understand very, very well is solidarity from above. I mean, if you look at the relationship they have with the vulture funds, with the Dennis O'Briens, how the banks were bailed out in an unprecedented move. They met the bankers in the middle of the night and all our money went up to them. And then when I compare that to
with you, Fred. Can I just say that if there are people here who are not yet members of People Before Profit, the guys at the door here have membership forms if you'd like to sign up. Now we're going to finish off the evening with each of our speakers coming back for a couple of minutes. We'll go in the same order. I think are we okay without this thing? Yeah. The magic disc. There you are. So Paul, Evelyn, Jerry, Aoife, and then Richard.
Cool. Yeah, I think that was a really amazing discussion, and it's really interesting. Like the fact that this event sold out in an hour. The fact that everything that you do around Catherine Connolly sells out in an hour. The Vicar Street sold out in an hour. Galway was gone in an hour. Everything. It's like, it's really illustrative of like a page has been turned in terms of the levels of activism, the levels of engagement. Like Sarah was saying, people want to come together and have these sort of conversations. There's a huge opportunity right now of people feeling positive for once, people feeling some hope about their power to deliver change, and we have to grab this moment and point a way forward. There can be a tendency to say, well, it's all about the elections, and the next election's long, and we kind of let the dust settle and we see how things turn out. We have to grab this moment now. It's why People Before Profit were out very, very quickly with a series of proposals, a series of ideas. They're not ultimatums, but they're about us saying we have to find a way forward together in terms of getting this momentum, pointing in a positive direction, bringing it onto the streets and bringing it into the elections. And secondly, just in terms of bringing it onto the streets, I mean, I would love to whatever with all those various the people that were mentioned in terms of on Palestine or whatever. Obviously, I can't speak for those other people as to whether they're willing to engage in those protests, but I think that's the discussion that we need to have. I think neutrality is absolutely central. Like, if you had to pick one issue that was the most important, most dominant issue in the presidential debate, it would be neutrality. You know, we just had a presidential election. We won. People rejected militarism. People rejected NATO. People rejected the line of head of our country. We won. We just had an election where neutrality was the dominant issue, and yet they are going to come back in a month's time or 2 months' time and try and get rid of the triple lock as part of, like Adam was talking about there, they've redefined neutrality to mean they can do anything up to actually formally joining NATO. Anything else, in their words, is neutrality. They can send troops to participate in an invasion led by NATO, and that's still neutrality, as long as they don't actually join NATO. If they got rid of the triple lock, they could have sent troops to participate in the invasion of Iraq. And in their minds, don't worry, they're still neutral. Like, triple lock, I think, is absolutely central. I think the idea of focusing on that, on neutrality, I agree 100% on the point about disabled people, who I actually think that's another movement that was behind Catherine Connolly's victory. It's really good that Catherine has said that's like the first group of people who are going to be into the Euros. The final point in terms of the election point is, like, where do we want to go and how do we get there? Where we want to go is to have a strong vote left, transfer left pack at the next general election, tied to a series of broad principles. I think that's where we want to get to. How we get there from our perspective is both from above and from below. So openly, honestly talking to the other parties and saying, this is what we see the way forward, how do you see it, and engaging in discussion, but also trying to create the pressure from below, like Catherine Connolly did. That's, I think, how we can maximise pressure to get us to a position where we can present people with a clear choice, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, those who would prop them up, or the possibility of a left government. Thanks.
Thanks everybody for the input. I take my time on thinking about what to say. I like to take notes. I like to reflect on things, much like somebody else we know who most recently won a really nice campaign, which is great. I think we have a lot of lessons to learn from this campaign nationwide. I think there is great opportunities for discussions within all parties. I am concerned though about going forward, our use of language and how we get there. I'm somebody, I don't like confrontation, I don't like conflict, I don't like words like fighting and I understand that the struggle is there, believe you me, I have lived that struggle as well. the whole reason I got into politics was because I was so frustrated with how humans were being treated in this country. I get that different groups feel marginalised. I absolutely fully appreciate that. But I think if we can't get the basic things right for humanity, we're in trouble. We're in huge trouble. We need to be united. We need to have a single voice. We need to look at universal design. We need to look at a more peaceful approach as to how we go about things. Because if we keep on going out saying we're going to fight, we're already up against a battle. So like, how we choose our language going forward, I think, is going to be hugely important. What comes next is going to be hugely important. And yeah, as I said, I'm much better one-on-one, so feel free to come for discussion afterwards. And yeah, thanks very much for having me.
Thanks very much. Really interesting discussion, and good to see a packed room. Yeah, I think it's absolutely, the campaign was tremendous, and like I say, we played a role as a party really well in the south, and we played a role in the north. Like I said, Turner Catherine were in West Belfast, and she was up actually the week past there in the Culture Hat again. It was great for other people here. I missed her myself. I had last week. But also, I think there's a danger, there's an opportunity, and we should both be aware, be enthusiastic, positive, but aware of the danger, and that is, we should be calling for left unity, we should be pushing for it, the left government. But there's a danger, and kind of Aoife alluded or maybe expanded upon this as well, that parties like People Before Profit or TIE or seem to be like Soc Dems or like Labour. So it's a contradictory situation. We both need to work with those parties, push them as far left to the left as we can, but also to distinguish ourselves as a political party from them as well. It sounds contradictory, it's an art to it, a bit of a nuance, but I think that's what we have to try and do. I think we have to also, our task is twofold in some ways, is to be part of the movements that we're in. I think one of the biggest, sometimes it's used as an attack against us and People Before Profit, but yous are everywhere, yous are here, yous are there, yous are on Palestine, you're on house, and on. Yeah, it's a badge of honour, we're so to speak, about everybody who's oppressed and who's downtrodden north and south. So we need a party, continue to be a party of the movements, being a part of them and building them, but also a party that doesn't flinch, so it doesn't flinch when we get hit with the hardest questions. And I tell you what, I'm slightly biased being a member, but we've got the hardest questions, I think, over the years. When Zelensky comes into the Dáil, Catherine Connolly was, and accurately said she didn't clap, I think she did, if I'm correct. Paul Murphy and Richard Boyd Barrett and Gino and I think Bree was still there, didn't clap for Zelensky, and we got pilloried in the press north and south at the time. It was the correct thing to do. I'm still getting dogs abuse from unionist parties about being a Hamas apologist and they're losing their minds today. But not apologising to them or to Israel or to anybody else. And similarly, when it comes to questions of being apologists or sucking up to the EU, Joe Biden came to North and South before the genocide. People like us were refusing to meet him. So I think it requires politics to do that. It's not just that our people are good people, and of course we are on the left, but it's to have the politics to understand that who our allies are, and they're not in the US, anywhere, EU or elsewhere. So people who don't buckle, who don't flinch when hit with the hard questions, but also who will work with others to build those movements. Final 2 points. The question, obviously, it was of Sinn Féin was put out there. I think there's times, obviously, when we correctly and rightly be working with Sinn Féin, both north and south, and different dynamics on different campaigns. But the proof in the pudding is, left to their own devices, they're vulnerable to the right, and they will move to the right if they're left to their own devices. Asylum seeker and all the questions in the north, too long to list. But also they can feel pressure because they're working class base, north and south, they can feel pressure on the left. Our job is not to be just to give them a free ride, is to work with them, but to put the demands on them as well. And what do we do? What do we say? Catherine was a strong trade unionist, a strong supporter of workers' rights. What do we say when Translink workers, in a few weeks' time, transport workers in the north will be going on strike potentially against the Sinn Féin infrastructure minister? We back them. We back them, north and south. I think too often, I think Sinn Féin, whilst they should be worked with, they should be supported on these issues like Catherine Connolly. Get an easy ride. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Derek.
Just Yeah, I take a lot of them on board as I'm not a member of People for Profit. Yeah, the only thing I didn't get to mention in my first round of speaking, and I think someone else touched on as well, but giving the people the facts, and also the other person who talked about, more independent media. I'd be making a lot more money if I played the game, and I'm not playing the game. And, it is very hard for independent media to get funding in Ireland. I have been told repeatedly when I pitch things that RTÉ aren't going to go for that because of whatever stance they might think that you're trying to get across. But also just what the lady said about disability. Catherine made that one of the focal points of her campaign and something she cares a lot about. And I think when it comes to that kind of clear language, my big concern is the far right. So I come from a working class community in Derry, very Republican, and consider themselves, more blacks, more dogs, more Irish type of feeling. And I have seen people in my own community fall victim to far right talking points and that demonisation. We had a black mayor in Derry. I have never seen so many people who didn't give a shit what the mayor did before take a big interest in what this black lady was doing. And I think it's that common speaking when we are talking to people. It is so easy, and I do it with my own mother at times, that I jump down her throat when she mentions something that I'd be like, where did you hear that? And I think we need to meet people where they are, and we need to say to them, it is not asylum seekers' fault that your child is on a waiting list for a surgery or a speech therapy. I know it's so easy, because I used to live there as well, but it is so easy to see the people in Coolock and see the people in Drumna and want nothing to do with them and say, that's not my Ireland and you are all morons, but that's not going to help anything. These are people who have been continually forgotten about by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and they're incredibly pissed off, and they are being misguided by people. I'm not trying to excuse their behaviour, because racism, there is no excuse, but there are a lot of people here who are being fed a lot of misinformation, and because of their vulnerability in society and how Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have treated them, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, it makes their life so much easier if the far right get to blame asylum seekers, and they're not. So we need to get those people away from Coolock Says No to the gates in Kildare Street. That's the deadline.
And my last but not least,
Yeah, look, I think it's been a great discussion, and the most important thing is that we take this discussion forward and that we build on a fantastic victory, and it really is a victory, and people have talked about a bleak landscape out there, but this is a very, very important victory. And if I might say, you can't use words like victory when you're talking about the genocidal horror we've seen in Gaza. And you can't even really talk about a ceasefire when you talk about the horror and the constant breaches of so-called ceasefire by Israel and their obvious desire to go back and start the massacres again. But insofar as there's been any let-up in the horror in Gaza, it has happened because of a mass movement across the world, including this country and across the world, and the resistance of the Palestinian people. And it's very important to understand that, because, what we have witnessed, if ever there was an argument for saying we have to get active now, it is the horror that we've witnessed in Gaza. Because if they can do it in Gaza, and if they can get away with it, or if they can restart it as they want to do, who's next? Who is next? And it's not just that the people in Palestine will suffer from that, because we all know that the weapons that have been used to massacre the people in Gaza are made in the USA, made in the UK, made in Germany, made in Europe, and these people are willing to turn those guns on us. And they're willing to send us out to die in their resource wars for profit, for corporations, and so on. They've done it before, and they'll do it again. So there's a lot at stake, but we've actually seen an unprecedented mobilisation across the world. I think the Catherine campaign, as well as all the obvious qualities and authenticity and principle of Catherine and campaign, I don't believe, well, I don't know what you've won without that mobilisation, but certainly you played a very significant part in it. Or even, to be honest, I don't really know about Zoran Mandani's politics in detail, but when you get a guy who's potentially going to get elected in New York, who's describing himself as a socialist, who's been denounced by Trump as a communist, who's talking about free public transport, who's standing with the Palestinians, who's talking about affordable housing, you think there's a lot of people across the world, including in the heart of the beast in the United States, are looking for alternatives. So we have to, the stakes are very, very high, and we have to build that alternative. And to my mind, although, all the questions, the critiques, the concerns about the toxic politics of parliamentarianism, or the doubts and concerns and worries we have about others on the left, all absolutely valid. But I think we have to recognise that huge numbers of people out there see it as fantastic when the left come together. They see the left coming together as an important part of these victories. They see, and they are right, that when we can push, bounce, whatever way you want to put it, right, these people into mobilising around Palestine, backing bills to sanction Israel for its crimes, for whatever reason they do it, it adds strength to that campaign. And suddenly the whole becomes more than the sum of the parts. And that's why, while we have all those concerns and doubts, we also recognise the absolute need to build that unity in order to mobilise people, because that's what people want to see. And then within that, we have to have the debates about how we make sure it stays principled, it stays grassroots, that it doesn't just become about electoralism, but it's actually about fighting in the here and now to make a real difference to ordinary people. Now, to do that, we need you. It's as simple as that. Like when I hear people say neutrality is the most important, or disability is the most important, or Palestine is the most important, or the health service is most important, or workers who may be coming out and strike are soon the most important. They're all incredibly important. And we need committees and groups who are organising to build movements around every single one of these things. And we are just not big enough. That's the truth. We're just not big enough. But there's a huge number of people out there are looking for a way forward. There are many people in this room, and you can make a difference. As Cian said, you can become organisers to build this movement. So we would just urge you, we don't have all the answers, but we are principled, we are serious, we believe change comes from the bottom, not the top, but we also want to build that united movement that will actually change the world, and we believe it's possible, but only if we have you as part of that project. Get involved.
A huge thanks to all our speakers travelling as far as some of them had to, bombing down the road, and again, sorry for the people who weren't able to attend, who were on the platform. But I think we had a really interesting discussion. I hope people will stay around, have a drink, and of course join People Before Profit. Thank you.